Jules, this is Brian. Lives on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well, it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So happy this time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you. And I will see you later. Hi, babe. Hope I call you.
And you hold out this hope, especially for someone like Brian, who, this is a silly way to put it, but he was a warrior, and you just didn't believe that something like this could take him away. So you hold out this hope until it's validated somehow. And all I needed was that message. And I think he very selflessly left it. I don't think he left it until he knew that he wasn't coming home. When I got it, it was just so Brian, and it was his final request of me, and his final way to let me know that he was going to be okay, and that he believed that he'd see me again, and that's all I needed to know. And it was I'm thankful for it. So thankful for that message, because at least I know, without a shadow of a doubt, what he was thinking. The calmness in his voice soothed me. So I do have that. And because it's on a message, I'm able to share it with anybody that wants to hear it. And it's very powerful. He made very powerful statements with that message.
When we had spoken originally about doing something for September 11th, I sent something off to Aaron, and Aaron said, why don't we run this instead? And I couldn't find a better way, and Paul agreed that we could honor the folks from 9/11 and to run the piece on Brian Sweeney. Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Other Side. I'm here with my host, Paul Fournier, and our special guest tonight, Tim Gagnon from Veteran Agent Services for Spencer and East Brookfield. Tim, how you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Well, we got some questions for you. I know that you've just taken over the job. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first? Give us a little bit of background.
Well, I'm originally from Worcester. I've been living out in East Brookfield for the last 10 years. I recently retired from a public safety career in the state of Massachusetts, and I saw that Peter was retiring, so I thought it was a great opportunity to help serve my fellow veterans. And so I've been on the job now since July 1st, and it's been something new every day that's been happening. So it's been a great experience so far.
What's the common theme you keep hearing from veterans? I'm sure there's probably a couple things that are probably stand out more than any others.
Believe it or not, there is no common theme. Every day, someone comes through with something totally new, and it depends really on the demographics. You know, for older veterans who are already in the VA system, they seem to be pretty satisfied with that system. Other than the fact that a city the size of Worcester doesn't have its own VA hospital. There is some commonality in people's frustration that they have to either go to Boston, West Roxbury, or out to Western Mass, both which are great facilities, but still there's a lot of travel time involved. And as people get older, those trips to those long trips are difficult. The biggest complaint I hear in terms of access to the VA is getting into it. You know, we have a clinic on Lincoln Street in Worcester, and as you may have saw in the paper recently, that the Worcester access there is one of the longest wait times in the country. So I know they're working hard to do that. I think it's a question of demand and supply. We have a heavy demand now with a lot of vets coming back from the wars. We have an aging veteran population. The Vietnam vets now are in their late 60s and 70s. The Korean vets are in their 80s. And we're seeing a large number of World War II vets start to die off now. So I think there's a lot of demand for services, and I think that the VA has made some commitments to meet that demand, but it's going to take some time before they get there.
How forthcoming has the VA been when you've talked to people? I mean, have you had any dealings directly with some of the people at the VA and said, listen, I've got somebody that's in a unique situation here? Have they been very forthcoming in trying to accommodate those needs?
Yes, yes, and I have to preface this by saying I've been on this job for about 8 weeks. I spent 30 years in a state corrections bureaucracy, and I got pretty good at maneuvering my way through that. I'm now in a larger ocean, which you know. And first, let me just explain that you know the state of Massachusetts has its own veterans services infrastructure and bureaucracy, and it's a good one. Massachusetts is one of the few states in the country that really has a good, strong safety net for veterans, and the veteran service offices, of which I am one now, really are there to get access to those Mass Chapter 115 benefits. And then secondarily, I'm also a point of entry for folks as they try to navigate the VA system. Although generally people can navigate that thing and access that on their own, I try to be a helping hand. As I get a little bit more experience on the job, I think that I'll have a much better network to draw off of. As it is, I've got a really good network of fellow veteran service officers that I am able to call on a regular basis and get people what they need. The biggest things that people need when they come in, and they need access to the VA system as they get older. For younger veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who've got 10, 20, or 30% service-related disabilities, in some cases they need those disability percentages increased, and there's a way to handle that as well. And for older veterans, you know, Vietnam veterans, for example, who may have got out of Vietnam with a small disability, and now that they're older, you know, they need a larger percentage of disability. They had exposure to Agent Orange, they had PSTD, which they didn't even talk about as much back then as they do now. Thankfully, they do talk a lot more about that. And these are people who come in and are living on extremely low fixed incomes, and so we're trying to reach out to that aging veteran population and say, you know, maybe we can do something to help you out.
You also said before the show we were talking, you and Paul and I were talking, and you said that, and I kind of knew this from friends of mine that are still in the military, that there's a threshold for when people are getting out now. Instead of, you know, going along for your 20 years and doing your whole 20-year bit and then getting out, now they're actually rifting people out earlier because, like, as you said, there's almost a pyramid, and you either have to, you know, it's like in the scholar world, it's, you know, publish or die, you know.
Well, in the military world, it's up or out. You get to spend a certain amount of time in a particular rank, whether you're in the officer corps or in the enlistment ranks, and after a certain amount of time, if you haven't been promoted to that next rank. And then, especially with the military downsizing now, because, you know, we've ended the Iraq war, at least for the time being. That war is over as far as the large numbers of service members. And Afghanistan is supposed to be ending this year. So there's a lot been written about this. And so as the military downsizes, there are fewer opportunities to go up. And what we're seeing, I've had 2 or 3 people only in the 8 weeks that I've been on board so far that have come to me and said, I was planning on making this a career. I joined after 9/11, and I thought I'd do my 20 years. And then I'm finding now, you know, there weren't enough E7 slots. I was in E6, and they you know, now I'm competing for jobs with people that have been working in the workplace for the last 10 years while I was off in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's a challenge. Fortunately, there's some excellent veterans educational benefits. And I have to say, I've been very impressed, both locally and statewide, with the lots of veterans fairs that have been happening. And I've been trying to plug as many veterans, including my own son, into some of these veterans jobs fairs, and we've had some luck with that as well. So it's a challenge. I think that also contributes to the press on the VA centers too, because a lot of these guys coming back are trying to get hooked up with some medical services as well.
So it seems like the state's actually trying to reach out. The state and the feds are trying to reach out to some of these veterans.
Yes, I mean, I don't want to paint a beautiful picture here. It's never easy to navigate your way through these systems, you know. And in order to be qualified for state Chapter 115 benefits, which are small cash supplemental benefits for people that are almost below the poverty line. You need to be at that level of poverty. So it's not like people are living high on the hog there as veterans, but there is a very good overlay of services, and sometimes the challenge is finding the right service for that veteran that needs it.
Now, given the influx you're just talking about this, about folks coming back from Afghanistan, do you think the VA is going to be ready for what they've got on their plate now, as well as an influx of people that are going to be challenging the system coming back home?
Anything I would say to that would be purely speculative. I myself have not had to. Most veterans, most young people getting out of the military. When I got out of the military, I think I was 26. I've never been to a VA facility, well, ever. And so a lot of kids coming back don't feel that they need those things, and so whether or not that's going to create a rush on the VA. I think the VA is handling that right now. It's really more the elderly vets as they get older that need those services. I think that the feds have recognized that they had some very high-profile issues nationally around the country, and I think a lot of resources are being brought to bear, and we'll have to just see going forward how successful that effort is.
There's been a lot of publicity. I mean, in the last couple of years, there's been a lot more about veteran affairs, especially given the fact that we're sending so many of these kids over there and they're coming back. And from what we're seeing on TV now, how accurate that is, that remains to be seen. That there's a little lacking in some of this, but the other part of this too is the government moves slowly, and there is a large influx of people coming into this system, and this is a system that's already been burdened for the last 10, 12 years. With all these wars we've got going on, plus all the older vets that we're dealing with. Have you had any situation where you talk to state reps or introduce yourself to like Senator Brewer or anybody like that, or try to make some contacts within the state house?
Yeah,
not that you don't have enough on your plate already.
I know Senator Brewer, and we're going to miss him sadly. I think when he retires this year, Senator Brewer has been very out in front on veterans issues since day one. And he's been a go-to person for anything related to veteran services, as has the state reps in the area. I recently had a veteran, an older veteran, a 60-year-old veteran that had lost a job he had for a long time, and he was really in rough shape, and then he had a problem with his unemployment over some small bureaucratic thing with his unemployment. We got a state rep on the phone, and within 24 hours, I think we had that problem squared away. He got his unemployment squared away. So I think that the state reps and state senators have been very helpful. Congressman McGovern in Worcester has also been very helpful. He's got some people working for him that we can call when we run into some red tape that we can't handle. So I think the politicians have been very sensitive to the needs of the vets, and we've been lucky with that. As I get further and further into this job, I'm probably going to find out, who talks the talk and who walks the walk.
That's the way it always is. Now, what are your hours down at the town hall? Just basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays?
I'm working Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Mondays and Tuesdays from 9 to 2, and Wednesdays from 10 to 3. I also go in there off hours as well because it's been quite busy lately. And so people can either email or phone. The telephone number down there at the office is 885-7500 extension 115, or they can access me through the town hall website as well. And it's pretty much an open door policy. People come down and see me quite often. So I think that the vets know that we're there and we're there to help them, and it's a good situation there.
You got any questions, Paul?
Can you just let the viewers know what towns you actually handle? Make sure that they know that it's not specifically just Spencer.
Absolutely, and I am from East Brookfield, and my office is in Spencer. Spencer and East Brookfield. I also handle veteran services for the town of Rutland as well, and that's generally speaking, the law requires for a population of 12,000 or more, the state law requires a full-time veteran services officer.
Oh, sure.
And so Spencer's population is just under 12,000. So we're quite busy over there, and it's a pretty lively place. Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and welcome any veterans to come in and say hello. And I'm going to be trying to get out to some of the senior centers over the next 2 or 3 months to make myself available to some of the seniors. I think there's a lot of seniors living on extremely low fixed incomes who are either widows or widowers of veterans or veterans themselves who might find that they're eligible for some state benefits as well.
We can get you, if you want to just leave your number with Aaron and Kyle, I can get you Pam Woodbury's number. She's the head of the senior center, and I'm
That's
sure
awesome.
she'd be more than happy to hook you up with the folks out there.
Great.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or?
Well, it's the learning curve has been steep. If you bring me back in 6 months, and we can maybe have even a more detailed conversation.
I would like to. Well, we want to at least give you a chance to, introduce yourself to the public and let veterans know that you are there and you are aware of the issues going on. And we thought this would be a good introduction and good chance for you to reach out.
Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate
Thanks, Tim.
it.
Appreciate it.
In the meantime, we got PSA.
Yeah, in the meantime. We've got a few public service announcements that we'd like to talk about. And there's one woman in particular who has done an awful lot of work behind the scenes. And it's all good stuff because it creates conversation. It gets people that live in either of the towns really involved, and that's Lily Lund.
Turn this on.
She has opened up and she runs 3 Facebook pages. One's the Spencer Forum, the Spencer Bulletin Board, the Spencer East Brookfield Non-Collaborative PTO, and who else knows what else.
She's got other irons in the fire, I'm
listen,
sure.
but she does a great job,
Yeah, she does.
monitoring the sites, and she keeps everybody, level-headed. Hey, you can't post this there, but, thank you, Lily. You do a great job. We have the Spencer Cable Access Food Drive, which is next weekend, September 20th. The video that there it is. The video that we did at the Spencer Food Pantry has had over 300 hits. Listen, these, and I think Tim even said it. Besides veterans, there's a lot of people that need help.
Oh, absolutely.
Times are tough. The church does a great job gathering all this stuff up, and Aaron does a great job every year.
Yeah, he does.
I believe this is the 3rd year, Aaron. I think 3rd year, 7th.
7th year, yeah.
7th.
McPherson started it. Carol and Bob started this years ago.
So seventh year of this food driving, and Aaron, I think you've cranked it up a couple of notches this year with those special guests that you have coming in, the singers, and one was from American Idol.
The Voice, I think.
The Voice, one of the two.
The Voice.
The Voice. So September 20th, bring down some food, some cans, and so we can really stack that
Any
pantry.
non-perishable
Yep.
items. As a matter of fact, we've got a video we can roll into. Kyle, could you run that for Spencer Food Pantry, please?
For many people in this community, it's their salvation. It's the only place they have to turn, and some of them wouldn't be eating as well, or wouldn't be eating at all, some of them, if it wasn't for the food pantry and for what it does.
We feed anywhere between 160 and 190 some odd families a month. That's a lot of families to feed, and because the people in this area are so generous, we feed them very well. The food pantry is located in the church, but we service anybody who's in need, anybody who's hungry. We're more than happy to feed, and because we live in such a wonderful community, really, I can't say enough about this parish and how good Father Jim is to us, and the Exchange Club, and just the people in general.
Because it's part of the mission of the church to feed the hungry and part of the message of Jesus, and we vest ourselves on the message of Jesus because that's who we are as a Christian community, and we reach out in imitation and by His power to feed the hungry and to welcome people who are in need.
The assistance of the community to our mission here to feed people and to feed them well and with the love of God requires everybody in the community to partake of that. It's the odd item that come in that somebody will be desperate for, or we have autistic children with special needs, and that item that they need will come in.
I want to just say thank you to anybody who helps us in any way with this ministry that's so essential to the well-being of the community, and we want you to know that the church is very grateful, and we are very grateful for anything you do for us.
I just want to say thank you to all those who their fidelity to the food pantry it overwhelms me. That you are all remembered in our prayers. Thank you for the food drive. I'm sorry I can't be here live, But I would say God bless you and thank you all so very much. And please remember to pray for the clients, because that's what makes it all work. We are a people of faith. I think this is a community of faith, I believe, here. So I thank you and God bless you all.
You have no idea how loud that is in the studio. My ears are still getting waxy here. Paul's got one.
We have one more public service announcement. Knox Trail Athletics is having a meat raffle, but it sounds like it's going to be a whole fun time at the Spencer Country Inn. That's also September 20th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's September 20th, but the doors open at 6:30. There we go. You know, we're trying to change the atmosphere of this district. And little by little, I think we're chipping away at that. And what's funny is she just mentioned community, the lady that was just talking about the food pantry. And this is one of the things, that day is one of the, September 20th is one of the things that I think that could galvanize this community, between the food drive and this thing for Knox Trail Athletics. I mean, I think it would be a great time to just, I think it's just going to help galvanize the community.
People just show up.
Just show up.
Well, it's like, and a big shout out to Kevin Hayes. From what I understand, at the last school committee meeting, he read a list of the volunteers, which I think is great, because this was an idea that was brought about by Paul and
No,
David,
it wasn't brought.
David
No,
Bayshant.
it was brought.
It was brought up by Dave Bayshant, and you kind of carried you two carried the ball from there. But there was a lot of people involved in this, and I was glad that they got the recognition that they deserved. It was a lot of hard work, and a lot of people showed up, and I was very surprised. And it was funny. I was talking to a couple of officers. I told you before the show. I went down to vote Tuesday night, and they said something to me, and I've run into that a lot. People saying, wow, you did a great job. No, I didn't do a great job. We did a great job. It was a community effort, and that's the kind of thing I think we need to see more of, you know. And I think we've talked about this on the show and off the show. You could be critical of the system, but you know, at the end of the day, it's either stand, follow, or get out of the way, you know. And people need to feel comfortable enough to step up and stuff like the meat raffle and like the food pantry drive. I think they've been doing this food pantry for years, and if it wasn't for that food pantry, there'd be people who'd be going without food on their plates.
Absolutely.
Bottom line.
Absolutely.
And that's sad to say, but unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know.
You're lucky to live in a town. Listen, I know we've had our problems over the last few years, but you're lucky to live in a town where, at certain times, I don't know what it is,
They come together.
This town comes together, and it just makes it's just unbelievable what they can do as a group, you know.
They just need a reason.
Even as simple as painting the school.
That was amazing.
What did we expect? Hey, listen, if we had 4 people
I said
show up,
if we got 4 or 5 people show
6.
up, 45 people over 2 days.
I mean, unbelievable. But that just goes to show you that there are people vested and invested in this community, and it's just a matter of time when you can kind of feel that flow starting to turn, you know. So hopefully we can just, you know, get the superintendent thing done and you know, move away from interim stuff and focus on just getting this entire place turned back around.
And I think that's the hope. I think there's been so much of this interim superintendent and interim principals and interim. It's like, you know, we need people that are going to be permanent, they're going to be vested in the district, and that's some of the stuff we're going to be talking about tonight as what related to the school committee meeting. There's, you know, we just hired a new principal for Lake Street. Thank goodness. I'm glad that happened. We've got a new assistant principal working with Dave Bayshant. Tom Lauder's working with Dave Bayshant over at Prouty. So things are starting. I think things are starting to come together.
From what I've heard about the atmosphere in the high school, has seemed that it's changed. I don't know if it's because Dave is principal and Tom is that just the two of them seem to get along very well.
I think they're going to be a good team.
You know, but believe it or not, Dave said because of the painting that we did inside the foyer, there, and we're going to do some more, but it's like the students and the faculty. I'm not sure how much of the faculty, but the students almost feel like a sense of pride.
No,
that's
that's what it's about. I mean,
getting rid of the blue. But yeah, I think it's important that I've said it before. I'll say it again. Fish rots from the head down. And if you don't have that key cog on the top, you're going to continue going in the same direction that we were spiraling down to before. And you need that key cog in the top.
I think it's part of that's changing because of who we've got there now. I think Dave's going to. I think Dave's been somebody who's been from the very beginning, has been very kid oriented. He's always been a kind of a focused guy, and now, I mean, and this is no word of a lie, and I can't speak for all the principals because I don't go by the schools, but I go by Prouty, and I can't tell you, in the last couple of weeks I've been working local. I've been like Shrewsbury, Upton. I go by there at like 6:30 in the morning. He's there. I come home 5:30 at night. He's still there. So that shows me somebody, and for like I said, for all I know, the other principals are also doing this. I have no idea. I would like to think that everybody's invested, and I believe they are. But I go by and I see that, and that's important because that's the school we're going to be losing kids from the most, And I think that's that whole feeder system goes right into that, and if we lose them there, we're done.
Yeah, I think I was asking about that the other night, and I think we're down about 100 kids out of school choice.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It was it's a tough deal. I mean, it's you've got there's no direction, and that was we had no technology. We had it was Captain Chaos really is what it was, and I think we got some great teachers in this district. I've seen it with my own eyes.
I don't think there's any question.
I know some of them personally, and some of them have confided in me personally, and there's no reason why we can't have this school district, the top of the cream.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? I don't want it to be the drag.
All the players are there. It's a question, and I think this is a good segue into the school committee meeting.
Which was rather boring.
Let me turn that over to you because you were there.
Which was rather boring until it was very non-confrontational until the last 15 minutes. I mean, they gave their regular reports, citizen input, and then there's some things that Dr. Malvey wants to try and implement, which I think we don't need to do right now because he's interim. He talked about bringing in a less than part-time curriculum coordinator, almost like a consultant, which at this point in time, his days are numbered as far as being it, because I think within the next week or two, they're going to turn over a list of about 7 names to look at as far as superintendents. I don't want him starting anything else.
No, in fact, we talked about that before the show. That was part of the reason that he wanted to install Dave as only a 1-year, quote-unquote, interim principal, because he didn't want to saddle the next superintendent, but he's willing to saddle the next superintendent with a not-so-part-time curriculum director. And what happened to the curriculum director we had? I mean, wait a minute, that was one of those 5 jobs she was doing at the time. It's like that. You knew that was going to work out well. It's like...
Well, Mrs. Zablocki was doing that.
Oh, that's right. Who knew?
Deb Zablocki was doing that, and then she became took over as a superintendent, and then got
as the interim superintendent,
and then got railroaded. But that's a story for another day.
But
so that really what happened, and this goes back to the day before school started. And there was an article, I don't know if you saw it, but there was an article in the New Leader where some teachers had gotten together, and they wore black. And listen, I'm not even sure exactly how things were, but I guess it's a kickoff breakfast, and Dr. Malvey was coming in to talk, and apparently,
which is traditional. That happens.
Which is traditional,
but, and it is a non-paid day. Let's be real clear on that.
Yeah.
They are not paid for that day. That is a volunteer day.
Correct.
That they're there.
Correct. but speculation was that, you know, a lot of them got up and left right in front of Dr. Malvey because, and according to the Spencer New Leader, had something to do with contract negotiations. Well, when it came time for, at the end of the school committee meeting, it came time for the school committee members' input and things they may want to see on the agenda, Mr. Vincent Cloutier decided that that would probably be a good time to bring up the fact that he thought it was disgraceful that these teachers stood up and walked out based on contracts. And
Well, the funny thing was they didn't walk out, as
They
we
didn't.
came to find out. And I knew this from talking to a teacher, and she said, we didn't walk out. She said, we didn't go. So there was a lot of misinformation.
Well, I was,
You know-
I actually was, I got a message was sent to me after one of our shows. That this person had caught the end of it and wanted to clarify that we didn't go there and stand up and walk out.
Right.
We left 15 minutes early before Dr. Malvey even got there. And had nothing to, at the time, from what this person told me, it didn't have anything to do with the contract. It had to do with Dr. Malvey himself.
And I'd heard that from somebody else
Okay,
also.
so-
Yes, you're right.
You know, I understand that they're in negotiations, and you know, it's always a contentious time when contract negotiations are going on, and I know Mr. James has his job, and the school committee has their job, but I wish they'd listen a little bit more to the teachers so the teachers could do their jobs, and I think people have I think they have a tough time understanding that butting heads like this, like they did at the school committee meeting,
You're getting nowhere.
okay, only puts the us versus them mentality deeper, embedded more into the people that live in these towns. It's just more, and it needs to stop.
Well,
It
you
just
should
needs
go
to stop.
back. Kyle just said to me, you should go back and explain what happened at the meeting, because a lot of people haven't seen it. This is up on YouTube. This just went up on YouTube this afternoon, late this afternoon. So
Well,
if you kind of fill everybody in on what
So
actually
basically,
happened.
what happened is Mr. Cloutier started talking about what was in the paper and what had transpired, and you know how it never, you know, something like that never should have happened. It's disgraceful, disrespectful. Did mention something about contracts and negotiations and stuff, and Mr. James stood up and wanted to talk. And I don't know if he wanted to straighten out or rebuttal to what he was saying, but he was gavelled down. And, you know, basically, Mr. Hayes said that he hit the gavel once, that's enough. Hit it again, listen, I'm going to have you, you're going to be removed, you're going to leave or be removed. And then finally said, and then hit the gavel again. And Mr. James is already standing up. He's like, all right, we're done. Everybody, come on, let's go. And there was a group of teachers that got up and walked out. They walked out collectively. And that was the end of it.
Yeah, he was actually thrown out.
He was.
Kevin, because when I watched it tonight, he looked at him and he goes, Kevin just pointed to the door. And
He said, I'll have you removed. Yeah.
He says, you can leave or I'll have you removed. And that's when Mr. James says, you were out. And to be fair, the teachers that were there are not necessarily indicative of the teachers as a whole. And I think that's where people, you know, when people see, you know, when people hear these things, and it's like, and I'm as much of a victim of some of this stuff, because when I originally got the phone call that the teachers had actually walked out on Dr. Malvey, I understood that from the point of view that if you don't have confidence in the superintendent, give him a no confidence vote. You know, if it's about contracts, then fine, then come out and say that. But the fact that Mark James lets a lot of this play out in the paper and never comments on it or asks for retractions, it just feeds into the greater conspiracy of all this BS that we don't get anything done, and we're butting heads.
Think about the way that article was written. And if you were the head of the union, any union, but particularly this one, and you saw how that article was written, would you ask for a retraction? No, it was.
No.
And who knows if that's exactly how the information was given to that reporter at the time.
Oh, and that's
Okay,
we've both been on that side of the fence.
You know, and listen, I'm not against anybody here. I'm not for anybody here. This is just all we're doing is talking about what transpired. But if it was me, and that's not what was said, or that's not how I said it, but the reporter wrote it that way, I would immediately ask for a retraction or another statement or another something.
If the information was wrong,
Right.
absolutely.
But, you know, we're doing contract negotiations, and that very quietly
Does
gets...
this play into our
Well, it-
sympathy card, and and that's the thing I think that bothers me more than anything. And to be fair, when I first heard about this, I was like applauding Mr. Cloutier. But then I watched it tonight, and I'm watching it, and that's a Vinnie ploy from way back when he was a selectman, who was a chairman on a select board, and he would have a citizen input, and he had instituted what's now known as the Cloutier 3-strike rule. If you got gavelled down 3 times, you were not allowed to come to any more meetings, which, by the way, is patently illegal. And the ACLU took Mr. Cloutier to task over it. Vinnie, I don't have a problem with the fact that he brought this up, even though his information wasn't 100% correct, but the fact that he did it after citizen input. And this is Vinnie's famous for this. He will not directly have a confrontation with you in public unless he is in a situation where you are not allowed to respond. Now, I understand. As much as I don't care for Mr. James, I understand where he's coming from, because I was thrown out of a meeting, the same thing. I disagree with something Mr. Cloutier said, gavelled me down, that's it, you're done. I said, fine, I'm out the door. So if you're going to have that conversation, the time to bring that up for Mr. Cloutier, as far as I'm concerned, would have been when Mr. James, when I asked him if they have anything to add for Teachers Association reports, then he would have been the time for him to say, listen, and bring that out, and I would respect that. But don't wait until nobody can respond to what you have to say and go out, because that's the coward's way
Well,
out.
now-
And
now-
that
now
just
they
feeds into this headbutting
That's
again.
right. And now, if there's anything that you need to say or you want to say, you got to wait for 2 weeks or whenever the next school committee meeting
Well, the
is.
next month, yeah. They're not meeting every 2. I don't believe they're meeting every 2 weeks.
Maybe it's next month. Maybe they change. I thought they were meeting every 2 weeks.
And what does, in the grand scheme of things, and I understand, and I know how confrontational Mark James can be, and I know what the union is like behind closed doors. I'm aware, But at the end of the day, it's like you've got, and this is something teachers need to keep in mind. You guys have worked without a contract for 5 years now. You've either been playing catch up with the contract. 2010, they got the contract. That was only for the end of that fiscal year. Now we're back at it again. Now we're trying to do it again. Maybe your union management isn't working. That's just my opinion. But if I got a leader who can't get a contract done, either because he's too confrontational, because in any negotiation there's going to be a little bit of acrimony. But there is always the histrionics with the union. There's the standing up and the yelling. There was 2010 when James and Miller got up and screamed at the committee, at our committee. It's like it's never about just having a compromise or ever getting anything done. It's always long, protracted, and drawn out to the absolute nth degree. And then by the time they get this thing done, Paul, we're going to have like maybe a year left or finish that year out, and then we'll be doing this all over again.
Well, the last contract,
it's- come on.
signed was a year into it,
Right.
and it was only good for 2 years. So it ended. I believe the last one.
So at the end of that first year, you're back at it again, because that
immediately
following,
you have to get back. You have to get right
and that's
back
what
into it.
happened. And that's
Yes.
not the normal way to be doing things.
So I don't know. I thought we were going to get past this kind of stuff because I just you get so sick of talking about the same thing over and over and over again. But like I said, the school committee meeting was fine until that point, and then it just blew up.
It's just
And I don't think it needs to be like that. I just don't. And then I feel bad. It's the teachers that I feel bad for, because not only I know for a fact there's teachers in this district that fear for losing.
Oh, there's no question.
That fear for losing
There's
their
no
job if
question.
they talk up or talk to, well, some of them talk to us, But if they speak up, either against the union or, Dr. Malvey, maybe a principal, I'm not even sure, but there's teachers in the district that have had enough. They
And
just want to
that's-
teach.
And that's real.
It is
That's
real.
a real fear.
It
This
is
isn't
real.
like somebody's just saying, "Oh, I feel put upon." No, there are people that actually fear for their jobs in this district, and that's not
when
right.
I get emails and telephone calls and messages saying, "Please don't use my name," but here's some information. You know,
Oh, yeah.
This is what really happened. This is what we're looking for. I think it's disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
How do you work? How do you work in any environment? I mean, I don't care if you're in construction or you're a cop or you're a teacher. How do you work in a situation where you feel like if you say what's on your mind, which is what you're supposed to be teaching our kids to do, you're supposed to be teaching our kids to be forthright thinkers and think for themselves. Yet we're telling teachers, oh, you can't say that. We know that for a fact.
Right.
I mean, this has gone back a long ways. And when the Lake Street teachers got threatened, and where was Mark James, and where was the union when somebody's being threatened? Again, I'm going to go back to the union. How come Mark James isn't standing up for you?
Well, we don't. Just to play devil's advocate, we don't know exactly what happened. If Mark said something to Dr. Malvey, you know, behind the scenes, I'm not really. I don't know.
Oh, I asked him flat out right after they had the problem when Deb Zablocki got rifted out for the they thought she was drinking at school.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Mark James after that, and I said, I heard some teachers were threatened, and he said, well, we had a discussion with Dr. Malvey, and that was it. We had a discussion. Okay, well, I'm not that I expect him to make me privy to all the information, but it's like, that's it? You had a discussion? It's like if people are worried about hanging on to their jobs and people are afraid to come forth and say something, how effective are you going to be as a teacher?
Yeah, you're just going to kind of go into work, do what you got to do.
And here's another point. Consider some of the quotes from the story in the paper. This is directly from Mark James. The teachers are constantly in contact with each other, and this is over wearing the black garb at the volunteer day. They're constantly in contact with each other. There certainly wasn't any kind of formal vote, but it evolved out of teachers talking amongst each other. Well, that might have been news to an aide that I was told asked when Dr. James, when Mark James walked up to an aide who wasn't wearing black and said, how come you're not wearing black? And she said, well, I'm not in the union. She says, I don't pay union dues. And he was all bent out of shape. Now, if this was something that just evolved naturally, this was just an organic process, and it truly did, please, it's like there's nothing that goes on that's part of an overall movement that Mark James of the union is not behind. And this isn't to play out some kind of political agenda, because for the record, I don't like Mark James. I have no use for Mark James. I think Mark James is a useless union official. Okay, that's just so we're clear.
I heard he's an excellent teacher. He's an excellent teacher.
My daughters had him, and they said it, and I've heard many kids say it. That takes nothing away from his ability to do his job, but as a union official, I'm sorry, this guy is not getting it done. You don't have contracts. You don't have any kind of backing. It's like, why would you feel like you're in fear for your life if you're paying $700 a year in dues? I just tell them, look, I'm going to keep the $700 to buy a baseball bat. I'll be better off. This is ridiculous. We're not going to get anywhere. I don't care if you hire the best superintendent in the world. If we bring in Mahatma Gandhi of superintendents, somebody's going to turn this district right around with a flip of a switch if we don't have people in place that feel like they can do their job and do their job without being inhibited. Bottom line.
I can't disagree. Like I said, if it wasn't for the constant, well, I shouldn't say constant, but the messages, the telephone calls, and the emails that I receive, and I'm sure you've gotten a few of them, but and they just don't feel comfortable talking at or above this union stuff.
No.
And there's some teachers out there that I don't want anything to do with it. I've heard that a couple
I'd be
happier
times, yeah.
without it. So it makes it's always contentious, always. And I don't know if it's like this in other school districts. I have in other towns.
Not from what I understand.
I have no idea.
Every time I'm working for somebody, and I work for a lot of teachers this past summer for some bizarre reason, and whenever I'm talking to somebody and I say, what do you do? And they go, oh, I'm a teacher. And I go, oh, well, and I kind of relate some of what's going on in our district. And they just kind of look at me and they go, really? And I'm like, well, yeah, this is the normal, this is what we do. And they're just always stunned. In fact, I worked for an assistant superintendent recently from another district, and I was telling him some of these stories, and he's like, really? And I'm like, I kid you not. And they can't believe it. And it kind of goes, it also goes to the fact and I had this conversation with somebody recently that didn't know what was in their contract. And you and I had this conversation just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How could you not know what's in? Because when Mark James says we're working without a contract, it makes it sound like we're in limbo. We don't know where our next dollar is coming from, but we think we're going to get paid this Friday. That's not the case.
No.
And explain that, because you were on that committee with the lane and step changes.
What happens is they're working without a signed contract.
Right.
But what happens is it reverts back to the last signed contract. So they're still under contract and they're still receiving the benefits of that contract.
Whatever the benefits were of that last contract
Correct.
is what they will continue to get.
Correct.
So it's not like they're not getting COLA. It's not like they're not getting steps and lane changes, because they are. You know.
Yes.
And recently,
I'm not sure about cost of living.
Well, if it was in the contract, from what I understood when I was on the committee, if it was in the contract, if it was like, say, if it was a 1%, then that's what's going to carry. The last COLA you got, I believe.
I think from
But
what
could
I
be
can
wrong
remember,
on
and I thought we had froze the COLA. I could be wrong. I don't know.
But you said originally they had frozen. They had tried to freeze. Explain that when
Well,
you said
we
they had
had
tried to freeze the lane and step changes.
well, Mr. Cloutier made mention of the fact that the union received, or the teachers group. I hate calling it union. I don't know what else to, but it is what it is. Anyways, there was $175,000 that was shifted for steps and lane changes this year. Now, keep in mind, not everybody gets that,
Right.
because you max out at one point.
17, year 17, lane and step changes stop
So
until year 22.
I'm not sure, right? So I'm not sure how many of our teachers actually get a piece of that $175,000, because it's based upon, where you are, and like I said, if you're an older teacher, you're maxed out, so you really don't get anything out of that. But a couple of years ago, during the previous contract negotiations, we even tried to stop not me, but the team that was doing negotiations had actually stopped the money from the lane changes and stuff and had put it off to the side. I want to say it was like $360,000 or $365,000 or something like that. And that was, I believe that was Dr. Naaman's idea. Go figure. But we had to wait. We had to wait until we got. I believe they had to wait until they got legal counsel advice on whether or not that could be done. And Dean Moskos came back and said, no, you can't do that. You have to give that back up.
Right.
So we put that. I keep saying we, but put that money back into the.
It was back in play.
Back into play. So there has been money going to steps and lane changes. I'm not sure. The cost of living, and I know there was zeros as far as raises. I know that. So it's a contentious type of thing. It's crazy just the way it works, because we're gonna go right back into this, like you said before. We signed it.
We're not moving forward.
It was a 3-year contract, and it got signed after the first year, so that left 2 years. That's up. So now you're working on the past contract, and you're going to go at least probably in a year. So even if they sign it, if it's a 3-year deal, then there's only going to be 2 years left on that contract.
And there's going to be 1 year, and you're going to be back in negotiations
Right
again.
back at it again.
November, you'll be back in negotiations. It's like,
Yes.
at what point do we start actually moving forward?
I don't know. I don't know.
You could beat your head against the wall.
I
The mantra for the school year should be, we can do better. I mean, and we've been saying that on our site, and it should be. We can do better than this, And I'm praying the MCAS scores that come in hopefully within the next week or so, are going to bear out that maybe we're moving forward educationally as well. I mean, I would like to think so.
I don't know. This curriculum mapping and I've never seen anything take so long in my life. I'm not sure if that's just the way the public.
This has been going on since 2010.
Maybe it's a big map.
It's
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But
on another note, the primary results are in. Obviously, Mr. Berthium, congratulations,
yes,
Donnie
congratulations.
Berthium. We've already been in contact with Mr. Berthium about bringing him and Mr. Castriata in for a debate. Donnie's agreed to it for the 25th tentatively, depending on whether or not we get Mr. Castriata in. We could do them one at a time, but I'd really like to bring them both in because we've been hammering the Republican candidates, and we'd like to give it. And this is for you, Mike Malone. We want to bring in the Democratic candidates. Well, I apologize ahead of time. Paul and Josh and I, this is the first time we're doing anything like this, so we weren't aware of scheduling, and there was a lot of moving parts to this thing. And all we tried to do was, because we knew there was a primary, because at that time there was no Democratic primary. There was just one candidate when we started this whole process, and we had to see that through to the end. So we apologize for not bringing in the Democratic candidates. And Mike, thanks for calling us out on it, because you're right. We should have been kind of flip-flopping them back and forth, but we didn't realize till after we got involved in this, Mr. Castriata also had a candidate running against him. So,
Which I think that candidate showed up late or something. It was very strange.
It was
late,
pretty much down to the wire.
Late papers.
Yeah,
but,
it was down to the wire. So I mean, and like I said, we're making this up as we're going along with some of the stuff. Let's be honest. Especially the political debate, bringing people in. Which the next when we have Donnie and we have Mr. Berthium, we have Mr. Castriata in, the questions are going to be a lot more hardball, because now you're candidates. Now you're not primary candidates, you're candidates. So now we're not going to have any problem unloading the gun and saying, as long as we keep it to political debate, here's a political question. I want to see how these guys are going to function under pressure, because we're not going to be giving anybody questions ahead of time.
No.
No.
And
then no personal questions, but they will be political questions. And, hopefully they're going to be able to answer them to the best of their ability and give everybody a chance to see how they're going to be on their feet. I mean, these guys are going to be holding down, a responsible position where they could possibly be able to bring some money back to the district. I mean, that's the hope.
Whoever gets in is going to have their hands full.
Are you kidding?
I'm not sure why either one of them really got involved. I don't know why anybody gets involved in
It's interesting.
In public government, in any type of government thing. Just that quick lesson on the school committee just cured my.
Oh, that cured my curiosity. Let me tell you, it's some jobs are just incredibly political, and unfortunately, school committee is one of those jobs. But state rep, and I ran for it. I ran for state rep, but I realized the mistake I made was running as an independent, and there's no way I would ever do it again, because I couldn't run as anything but an independent. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I can't say, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I want to do. I can't do that.
Right. Well,
I
don't know. It's I'm hoping, or what we're hoping for is we get some interaction from the people of the Spencer and East Brookfield at least. I know people from the other towns don't get to see us unless they go to YouTube. So,
right.
Or if they stream it online, But it would be great if the people from the two towns, at least the two towns, could send us some questions that give us some feedback of what it is that you want us to ask these guys. This is your chance that, you know what I mean? We're going to have them on for an hour, and let's not talk about, bus routes or anything.
Who'd you vote for president?
Yeah.
Seriously?
If you guys, this is your opportunity to, get some questions answered and use it as a tool to make a decision on who it is that you think is going to be better at doing this job. Then, it's not a popularity contest. It's who is going to be better to do this. And that's what really we need to focus on. So if you've got questions, we'll have, we'll make sure that we put our email will be all over our Facebook page.
Yep.
And send some questions in for us to ask.
I think you bring up a good point. You can also call in anonymously. And this
Yes.
is when I said to somebody, we talked about this the other day. Somebody said, I said, well, how come you didn't ask this, or how come you didn't ask that? And I'm like, well, how come you didn't call in? And they're like, well, because you have to give your name. You do not have to give your name. You can call in anonymously. We're not going to track your phone number. We could care less where you're calling from. If you want to call in with a question and just say, I'm just a caller, that's fine. The guys are going to put it through. Josh and Kyle will take a look at that, and they're not going to have an issue with that at all. If you want to call in with a question, call in with a question. Call in with a phony voice. But just, get involved in the process. If you want to know how these guys feel, if you want to know how they're going to vote, should they get elected as your representative, then call and ask them. You know, because I talk to people all the time that are like, oh, well, how come he's not talking about this, or how come he's not talking about? Well, call him and ask him. You know, what do you want me to tell you? And I heard the same litany between Mr. Comtois, Ms. Gosher, and Mr. Berthium. It's like, well, how come they didn't talk about this, or how come you didn't ask them?
I don't know. I guess we were asked softball questions.
I don't have that I don't have that union thing going on where I can just sit there and mind meld into people's minds and let everybody know what's going on. It's like, you know, you got to, get involved and please call in and ask these people questions. Or any time during the show, if we're saying something you don't happen to agree with, or you think one of us is being a knothead, I'm imagining it might be me. Call in.
Pretty good bet.
Call in and just say, look, I don't agree with what you're saying, and take us to task on it. I mean, that's what it's about. So we got a minute left. How do you want to wrap this? Final thoughts? Final comments?
I don't know. Final thoughts. I just wish that we could get through. I wish we could just get through this school thing. I've got 2 kids in this district, and I want them to go to school here. And I'm so sick of people telling me that this is a lousy district. I know it's not a lousy district. We've got good teachers. Okay? My kids have had good teachers. We've got some problems. We've got some interior problems. And it's affecting how these teachers can teach. And it drives me nuts because when behind the scenes, when these teachers are coming up to me and saying things, it drives me nuts to not to be able to say something to somebody. This is the one time I can do this without, and I'll never use anybody's name.
No, that's a strict policy from day one. And we've been doing this show. We're doing a show a year in November, and that's never happened. We've never revealed the source, so that's not going to happen. It's not going to start happening now. Well, people don't understand. If you can't talk to us and you can't tell us what's on your mind, and people do tell us and they do talk to us, if we go and reveal our sources, we're going to be without any information. So we do appreciate people coming forward. We want to be real clear about that.
Yes.
Thank you for the folks that have come forward. So we got about 30 seconds left. I can't think of anything I'd want to say.
No, support that meat raffle for Knox Trail. Come out to the food pantry
drive.
You don't have to stay there for the whole day. Just bring some non-perishable goods. People need it.
Yeah, they do.
And as far as the Knox Trail, I'm not going to be around next weekend, but I think it's a great idea. And listen, we're struggling for money, and this is a good time to get together. And they're going to have other things to do there, but September 20th is big. You get the food pantry and Knox Trail Athletics.
I'll be there representing.
Nice.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. We will be back the 25th, hopefully with Mr. Castriot and Mr. Berthium. Till then, we'll see you later. Take care.
2 weeks.